in a nutshell, you can understand that there are some differences. It can be country difference, it can be industry differences, and I believe that, and not believe, I know that even the same agriculture difference in post-Soviet Union countries is different from US countries. In Saudi Arabia, it's different from US countries because maturity of the industry in different countries is completely different. And it affects people that work in this industry, and this people affects everything because they project their own experiences, their own beliefs to their business, to their work life. That's why you can distinguish some commonalities that more common to particular industry, but also see a lot of differences. And if you want to change something, you need to account for both. Right? You cannot just ignore, because we, as a human being, we are all irrational at some points, but this is irrationality. They exist, so you cannot just ignore, because if you just pretend that it's irrational, you will just not achieve any changes.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Wise and Addicts podcast episode. I'm glad to be here today with you again. It's been a while. I'm Ricardo, your host for this episode. I have background in design, communication. I've been through lots of different industries, and today I'm adventuring myself in the ag business. This podcast is an idea, a platform for business leaders, marketing leaders, communication leaders to share their thoughts, their experiences, and a few of their lives and professional and personal aspects of what they do. Today, I have here with me Slava from Acto. Welcome, Slava.
Hi, Ricardo. Thanks for inviting me and for having me today. I'm really excited and looking forward to share my experience, my thoughts on whatever topics that might be interesting to you and to your audience.
Awesome. So Slava, we've been we met a few times. I know a little bit of your history, and man, you've been through a lot of different challenges in your life, especially like professionally. Can you share a little bit of your background, who you are, what you did?
Yeah, sure. It's always hard to introduce myself to a new person, to a new audience, because you know a lot about yourself and think that it's all quite boring, not interested, obvious, but I will try to do my best here. I was born in Ukraine and I was living in Ukraine, I think till age of 28 years. And then the last 12 years I spent in Russia working. And last year I moved to United States. In terms of my professional background, I studied finance and I worked in finance industry in different companies, in commercial banks, in international audit companies, investment banking for the first 7 years. Second stage of my career is management consultant, international management consultant. I worked in McKinsey & Company. This is top global management consulting firm. And I worked I did the path from business analyst, it's like entry position, to associate principal, it's like partner position. And I worked there 9 years, and I think this is the company that played a big part in making me a professional, international professional. Then I spent 2.5 years on industry, and this was actually my transition to agriculture. I worked as director of meat processing department, and I was responsible for managing meat processing plants. I managed 3 plants and also disposal plants. Additionally to that, I was responsible for logistics and all marketing and sales, both export and domestic sales. It was a huge experience, completely different from consulting. When you're in executive role, you have P&L responsibility, you manage sales like $500 million, $500 million per year, almost 4,000 people under your direct management. It's like a huge, when you have such big responsibility, it's change your perspective on decision making drastically from consulting world. Yeah, and since October last year, when I moved to United States, I joined a different type of companies for myself. Um, I joined technology company in software development. It's a technology company. It's much smaller size, but on the other hand, we have possibility to work with the whole industry and implement our new technologies to the whole protein production industry. So this is in a nutshell, what I've done.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I was pretty impressive when I started talking to you the other day with all this background. How old are you again?
14.
40. Okay, awesome. This is a pretty impressive background you have there. So you've done all these amazing things, have been through all these different roles from consulting to having your hands-on managing 4,000 people company. Uh, so having that in mind, but also maybe personal aspects of your life, what would be the top three experiences you had in your life so far?
Three experiences. Yeah. Again, thinking about more like professional experiences that I think most interested um, to our listeners. I would actually talk about three experiences, and usually, and I think it's not an exclusion for me as for everyone. It's something that you actually spent a lot of effort, and when odds was not at your favor, uh, to accomplish something. It's more about experiences and achievements um, when it was really hard to do. And yeah, let me start one by one because I don't think that I have like three, but for sure two I can share with you. And starting from the most recent, it's happened in when I was executive, when I was director of meat processing department, and the company when I just joined has very not very, but it was industry standard, but high um, accident rate, so low safety. And when you work in meat processing department, and it was swine business, so and poultry business, fish business much more automated, and swine business it's still not automated. There are several robots in meat in the boning area, but majority of operations done by manually with knives. And there were a lot of accidents and accidents rate, near misses, but also accidents. And when you try to change something that involves large number of people, and at one plant I had 2,000 employees, 2,000 workers who worked already before I joined many years. So they have like a culture, they have like skills. Some of them spend there 10 years. And when you try to change something, there is usually misunderstanding. It's hard to change for everyone, and that was not an exclusion. And when you don't know when actually something will happen, so it's working with culture. It's to change something. It's not like tell people once or educate them once. It's you require to change something that they need to do even when you're not around, when the supervisors are not around. And as a result, after I think 2 years, we've been able to decrease accident rate. It's called LTFR, like long-term incident rate, by 70%. And I get this as personal accomplishment, and this is something that's very meaningful to me because it's very important to talk about safety. It's not about only margins, because behind all companies, all production volumes, all revenue numbers, there is also people, and it's not statistics, right? It's behind all statistics. There are just personalities. And when you get some like trauma in any age, like in 50, in 20, you live with this for all your life. And it's not something that you can then fix with money. Right? And this one of my experiences that was very challenging for me to get, but also something that I took with myself, and really proud of my team, because of course you cannot change such do such changes by yourself, right? You can only lead, support, encourage, but it's what my team has been accomplished. Yeah, this is about first one. Second one was much less dramatic, but also involves a large number of people. It was one of my project in with McKinsey in Australia, and we were changing also culture. Yeah, it's surprisingly big, but my second experience is also about culture. And we worked with I called it army of 5,000 technicians. It was telecom industry, and we were trying to teach this already mature professionals, technician guys, who was going to homes of people to fix internet or phone, and to increase we call it net promoter score. It's what marketing people will know. It's NPS. How a company it's a net score or probability of how customers will promote your company. How easy they will recommend to their friends and family. Yeah, and when a lot of technicians that work in telecom companies had experience of 20, 30 years, they started to work well before internet, well before mobile phones, even when the phones had not digit keypad, but circle. If you, I don't know if you actually use this, but when you talk about customer experience to these guys, it's something not understandable. That's sort of in different categories. What is important, what is not. But as a result, we were able again to teach them to change the way they're working, and we were able to increase productivity. That was one of the key targets of that exercise, but also at the same time increase customer satisfaction. That the whole company, middle management, high management, previously thought that this is completely unachievable, because they thought that this is has completely opposite direction. So you can improve one at the cost of the other, and we were able to achieve this all together. This was the second one. So in both cases, it involves several thousands of people. In both cases, it requires to work with culture. But the legacy or the results that we achieved, it actually continues to live after the project ends.
That's pretty awesome. First, I was impressed by that's something, right? It's not about impacting one or other lives, but the lives of many people. This by itself, it's a great achievement. And the first one also got me like, hey, I never. When I stopped to think about, I don't know, safety procedures. Well, today I'm in home office. There's not that many ways to get hurt in general, but I've been through different industries where there was, chances of, getting hurt and injuries. So when you think about this and how that change in the processes and also in the culture, as you were mentioning, they can change their lives like forever. If you increase like 70%, if you reduce by 70%, meaning each 10 people that would get hurt, now you have only 3, right? So you basically you made you gave another chance for the other 7 to have a much better life without their traumas and all the limitations that they would cause. So this is massive. That's awesome. And it's nice to see also like how you've been playing with different focuses. One thing is like safety, and now the customer satisfaction and all the work you've done in the culture within the company, and how both things connected. So today, in the challenges you're having, with technology in the agribusiness. How would your parents describe what you're doing today, your role?
Uh, it's very interesting question, and it starts even with McKinsey because I think now parents are much more understandable, much more understand what I'm doing now. In McKinsey, when you imagine these young guys travel around the world completely doing projects in different industries, different companies, uh, I think majority of parents, it was a joke, but it's part joke because my parents not from a business world, not from international business world. They didn't know that such industries exist, and I think this is a case for many consultants that people usually think that might be just a cover for working in intelligence agencies or being a spy because you travel a lot. You don't look like can provide some value for companies that work already for 30 years, 40 years, and you're just young, 30 years old. Like, how can you help? And now I do more understandable, more common job. We are developing software for agriculture, and now I can easily explain what I'm doing.
Awesome. It's easier now. uh, Slava, so now covering all these experiences you had, you've been through different industries and cultures. Can you share a little bit on like how were the challenges for you, having to face these different cultures, culture of industries and culture of, I don't know, countries, regions, companies. How can you tell us a little bit more and tell us how that helped you, developing your skills, becoming the person you are today?
Yeah, I think both for this one with developing myself as professional. Actually, McKinsey played a huge role in different aspects. First, by providing exposure to different industries, different business problems from top management point of view. Like average project in McKinsey lasts about 3 months. I worked 9 years. It means that on average, I completed around 40 projects. And 40 projects, imagine this as a different business challenges for top managers, like transformation or analysis of merger or acquisition of a particular company or post-merger management. And this is completely different industry. It's more or less the same because you start specialization on particular industry, but this is different company, might be different country, different people each time. So imagine that what experience you get working at 40 different jobs. And then once you get such exposure, you start your brain, you build a neural network, but in your brain that start to look at each problem with such a framework. Part of this you can synthesize, and what McKinsey is actually teaching the consultants. And some of them are more like on a soft side with working with people. And in a nutshell, you can understand that there are some differences. It can be country difference, it can be industry differences. And I believe that, and not believe, I know that even the same agriculture difference in post-Soviet Union countries is different from US countries. In Saudi Arabia, it's different from US countries because maturity of the industry in different countries is completely different. And it affects people that work in this industry, and this people affects everything because they project their own experiences, their own beliefs to their business, to their work life. That's why you can distinguish some commonalities that more common to particular industry, but also see a lot of differences. And if you want to change something, you need to account for both. Right? You cannot just ignore, because we, as a human being, we are all irrational at some points, but this is irrationality. This they exist, so you cannot just ignore, because if you just pretend that it's irrational, you will just not achieve any changes.
Awesome. Yeah, 40 different companies basically. Wow. That's I've been, I don't know how many jobs I've been through and companies. I went through a few, not 40, but to a few, through a few. And it's just like you mentioned, you start developing some kind of framework that, again, you respect the individualities of each different company and, the aspects of those challenges. But at the same time, you start developing your own way of thinking using the tools you've learned here and there, to be able to adapt. I think flexibility and the capacity of adapting is one of the main skills, that we
Yeah,
need to have today. If you think about technology, technology is changing so fast. I am a designer. Like I graduated in design, and if I stop to think like how I would be doing design, I don't know, 5 years ago versus how I would do today, which is not my focus today, but how I would do it, it's completely different. And the main reason is that the
technology.
technology has changed so much. I mean, you have AI that is just like, my God, with a few words there on your keyboard, you can do magic.
Yes.
Versus how long I would spend, how much time I would spend, just to work in a few images and things. So if you're not prepared for change, if you're not able to have this flexibility, this capacity to adapt,
Yeah.
you're you'll have some bad experiences probably, especially today. In industries that are impacted by technology, which are basically every industry today, right? Technology is all around. There's no way to escape.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. You'll experience limitations, but also you'll, with every year, you'll just start feel yourself less comfortable, because you'll be just stay behind what everyone else is doing.
So, Slava, I like the things that we're bringing about McKinsey. I mean, you've been through the probably the most prestigious consultancy, business consultancy firm in the world, right? Lots of people, I'm sure that lots of people, not only in our audience but around the world, business people would kill to have some, some insights to understand how is the way of doing, how professionals do things in McKinsey. You probably have, a framework for solving problems. What can you share with our audience about what you've learned at McKinsey?
Yeah, I agree with you. And I joined McKinsey as already thinking that I know a lot. And because I joined not fresh graduate, I joined as professional after 7 years, having 7 years of professional career in finance. And I was studying finance. There is in a very diligent and strict way in financial analysis. There is a international organization of financial analysts called Chartered Financial Analyst (CFA), with extremely high standards and requirements to be part of. Like they get, um, they do very extensive, like 6 hour exams once per year. So this is very high standard. And I was studying that and already passed 2 out of 3 levels. And I was pretty sure that I already like established professional. And I also remember myself having this buzz, or how to say this, conspiracy about McKinsey. I read a lot press articles, how hidden, how close this organization is, how powerful that it affects a lot of governments, a lot of countries. Like the most powerful people work with that. And I also read about great projects, great examples of impact that this company achieved, because usually it's quite secretive, and because of client confidentiality, it doesn't share a lot information outside. And I remember myself on the first day, on the first week of my McKinsey work, I've been sent to so-called introductory training, 1 week of intro, and that training, participants was all around the world, like from Latin America, from Europe, from US. So it was very international, and also it was very diverse in terms of background. And I joined as 7 years worked in finance. There were guys who previously worked as a colonel in army. Someone had PhD in biochemistry and medicine, and there are a lot of different profiles. And we were so excited to one of the sessions that called McKinsey approach to problem solving. And I think there are even several books on this topic, because McKinsey solves and focuses on the hardest problem. And you can imagine the disappointment at the end of this session, because everyone was said, but this is obvious. You explained 7 steps, so marketed McKinsey approach, but it sounds like very obvious way, like obvious thing. There is no any know-how. There is no any how is a philosophical stone or magic wands that you can solve, like, or sacred knowledge. No, it was just usual step-by-step approach to solving problem. Yeah, it was scientifically rigid. It was practical, pragmatical, but people usually overestimate. As a human being, and I'm not an exclusion, we want to think that there is something that we like a silver bullet. And what McKinsey and working in McKinsey taught me in both theoretical and practical ways, that by executing simple tasks with discipline, without skipping any step, you actually get remarkable results. Of course, it's possible that someone can come up with a great idea and then get a combination of luck, old environment, and then creates a new technology, breakthrough technology, and create a new industry. But in other 99% of cases, you get remarkable results just by doing usual common sense. And people, even in very large companies like Fortune 500 companies, top companies in every country, they know about this, but for some reason they are overwhelmed with job. They are just too arrogant to themselves. They are too confident. So there are a lot of different pitfalls, but they just tend to miss and skip 1 or 2 steps. And once you miss this, it's like a foundation of the building. If you miss this, it doesn't care how well you structure top floor if foundation is screwed. And this was one of the key learnings at McKinsey, and that shaped all my future career and work.
Awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, we're all the time looking for tools that will do some magic work and solve our problems. But at the end, it's about doing the ordinary things with consistency, really looking to do them with attention and, taking care of those. It's about, basically for me, it's about consistency on the ordinary things.
I think it replicates a lot with agriculture, because in agriculture, agriculture has different different type of sub-industry, and there are some industries when you have, like with some crops, you have this just 2 weeks in the whole year when you have to do plant your seeds, and then you just wait. In simple words, it's wait, and then you have just 1 or 2 weeks in the whole year to harvest all your season. But there are other things like protein production, and like when you grow animal or rice, then you have to be consistent 350 days per year or 360. And on when you look at all the small, each individual step, it sounds very simple to do. The problem how you ensure that you do it 80% correct the whole year, 360 days per year, or 365 sometimes. And I think that's
Yeah.
uh, applicable to many businesses even besides agriculture.
Yeah, it's for me good. And sorry for if it's not exactly this expression, but good sense, well sense. Good sense is one of the most important things. Like I'm doing some
Yeah, common
construction
sense.
repairs. Yeah, common sense. Thank you. So I'm doing some construction repairs in a new apartment that I acquired with my fiance, and this apartment, it has a place that just like rains and accumulates water. There's no
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
place where the water
Yep.
can go. And I was like talking to this engineer that we hired, and I was like, hey, I'm not an engineer, but shouldn't we have like some place for the water to flow and leave this space? And he said, man, of course you need to learn mathematics and know how to project things, but apart from a few things that are more technical that you should know, the rest is common sense. Like you need to understand, like if it rains and it will accumulate water,
Yes.
anyone can see that you need a place, for the water to flow. So and leave that space. So I think that applies to lots
Absolutely.
of
Absolutely.
different
And
professions.
I have business example to this, and I think this is one of the additional things that you learn being McKinsey at McKinsey or another top consulting company. One of the reasons why companies find themselves in situation when they need external help is in culture of having hierarchical culture, and sometimes even a CEO afraid to ask specific technical question, like he afraid to challenge like some technical professional, like head of the technical department or head of production with engineering background and working with 30 years. And because there is a notion that he is so worried in his reputation. But when you come as a consultant, you don't have this obligation to be the smartest guy, and you can challenge all assumptions that you're making. And you can ask, being not expert in particular field, you can ask a lot of things. And common sense really works. And I usually tell the story about I think it was in Korea. In these Asian countries have much stricter, much more hierarchical cultures, and there was in at one stage a development of airline businesses. Korea had much higher accident rates, much more airplane crashes. And when they started to analyze why it happens, what was the reasons? Because pilots actually had the same trainings as all Western culture pilots. They have the same facilities, the same programs, um, the same airplanes, the same approaches for maintenance and repairment. And they discovered that reasons were just cultural hierarchy. Because second pilot in the airplane, now we have a chief pilot in command who is like captain, and then we have second pilot or second officer. And the second officer, his obligation is also to challenge. He has the right and obligation to dissent or to challenge some decisions if he observed this. But in Asia, when you have this very strict hierarchy, they didn't have this cultural. It was very hard to challenge your someone who is more senior than you are, and as a result, they actually had airline crashes because of this. And even when they discovered this, they couldn't change it without uh, changing team structure. So they when they just told, it was so deep in the roots of both guys, second pilots and captains, that they couldn't change. And the only thing that worked, they started to do international teams. They started to combine one Korean pilot and with one that was from Western culture. And this was the only way that actually worked. And I think this example, this very bright example, can be transferred to any industry. If you have something, if there is no meritocracy, like that, if there is no, it is not idea that is the most important, the truth that is most important, then it's possible that organization will choose not the optimal way. And it's applicable to all businesses. And we as business professionals, we should be always aware and remember about this irrational but objective existent pitfalls.
Fear, right? Fear to to
Yes,
challenge someone in a higher hierarchy, or to show your weaknesses by making questions that you think you should not make to someone that is in a lower
exactly. Yeah,
hierarchy.
and it
Those
worked
are
from
good
two
examples.
sides. And this is when
Yeah,
it's cultural, it's very hard to change, hard to break.
perfect. It is. And so you were talking about like this, you know, migration you're doing to the agri industry. What would you describe are the main differences or challenges you're facing now in the agricultural industry versus, you know, the experiences you had with the consultancy and even the companies you helped during the consultancy?
I think that, and as I said before, agriculture, even the same industry, because in agriculture I moved from McKinsey in 2020. Yeah, I moved to agriculture. I worked as executive in swine production business. But even agriculture in and swine, poultry production, protein production in US is different from the same industry in post-Soviet Union countries. And I think one of both industries or industry globally is quite mature. But in US, it's even more mature because it started to develop in current state like 90 years ago. In post-Soviet Union countries and all post-Soviet Union countries, I think there was a change of regime. One Soviet Union has collapsed, and after that, a new industries has been built from scratch. And I think now and the longer you work without change, the more harder for you to change. And you would expect that in United States you should be much more advanced, but actually it's not always the case in both technologies, but also readiness to change. Because as one client and we are working in the United States, we're working with top producers in the industry, and as one client said that it's a pain, but it's a norm. And I think there's a lot of in this expression that they understand that this is a pain. They have actual losses, but this is a norm. And everyone, 99% of workers on different levels, accept this as a norm, and you don't want to change. And when you just start poultry business in like in post-Soviet Union country just 10 years ago, you much more hunger to change to best practices. You don't have people who work there for 30 years. You have people who work there just for 5, 10 years, and they are much more open-minded to change. And I think this is a huge difference that and that in how agriculture in US different from others. And I think I find myself like was a joke or part of joke. I don't know what is the exact name in English how to say this, but when a salesperson came to a developing country, salesperson of shoes came to development country. There were two guys from the same country or competing companies. They came to developing country like in Africa, and they were completely different in their reporting to the mainland. One called and said, "This is complete disaster. No one is using any shoes. Everyone goes barefoot. There is no market here. This is disaster. No market for us." And the other was on the opposite side, saying that this is great opportunity. No one using any shoes. Like no one has any shoes. Like, so this is a great blue ocean market. And I think this is
Yeah.
a thing with. I feel myself a little bit like this. So we are developing a new product, quite new product that not that hasn't been used by industry 5 years or 10 years, and we are at this initial stage when we have this new category of products, and we need to educate and to explain and also work with initial barriers of adoption to make easier for all companies to adopt these new technologies.
Yeah. Embracing changes and technology can be challenging, and I can imagine I can figure that in the ag industry being even stronger, because it can be a little bit more traditional, conservative. But I think you hit the point when you said it's difficult to change. No, sorry. Can you repeat that? It's difficult to change, but the longer you wait, it will be more difficult, right? If you don't want to
Yes.
embrace now, if you want to, so I think that's the main point.
Yeah, and agriculture industry is one of the least. If you put all industries in so-called digitization index or digitization maturity index, agriculture will be at the bottom together with construction. And there are a lot of fundamental reason for this. Why it's not by chance. There was reason for this, but now I think we actually at the point when all those barriers have been removed, and now it's more in our minds and minds of people who work in agri sector.
Yeah, it's good to see that it's changing, although it can be more conservative. Yes, it is changing. And Slava, there is also other side of your experiences with a little bit of communication, marketing, customer experience. I've seen a few articles in Forbes magazine where you were part of those articles, right? And you talked about from, I don't know, lead generation to customer language and other relevant things for people, especially in communication, I would say.
Yeah, customer
Can you
loyalty.
share a little? Yeah, exactly, customer loyalty. Can you share a little bit about that with us?
Sure. And I think I would like to share this. I think marketing language, and because I think this is something that is overlooked by a lot of entrepreneurs and marketing, and I think it will be much more important to talk about this. And a lot of all technology companies, when they develop new product, they try to increase chances for success. And there are a lot of articles and good knowledge pieces to say that you should test, you should understand your customer, not only as an industry, but also personas, and understand the real pain points to try to find the products that really solve the pain point, the real problem. And I want to talk about the next step. So once you develop a good product, that really solves customer pain. But the next important step is to actually talk to your customer in the language that he understands. And even inside one industry, when we talk about agriculture, about the same product, you need to understand what language they use. And even in one industry, on different levels of the execution, they can use different languages. To give you an example, if you will talk to growers, and this is contract growers, people who work in the field, and use such words about such synergies or impact, they probably will think that you're talking not to themselves at all, and it will not help you at all. So the idea is that I like that one of marketing experts that I learned a lot from. They use the common this expression that I remembered, that your product should not only be like food, that's something obvious for your customers, but also it should look like food. And I think this is a very great example, analogy. And imagine, especially when you travel to a different culture. And for me, I think Asia is one of the most distant culture in terms of food. I remember that there are a lot of examples when you look at something and you don't feel any feeling of hunger or any appetite to actually try to eat it, because for your brain it doesn't look like food, and for locals it actually does look like food. The same happens with marketing. You need to understand what your customer language and just speak to them in that language. It will increase your chances of success extremely, but also probably make it even possible, because if you continue to talk in your own, it will just not work.
Perfect. We see a lot of that in the when we're doing like our podcasts and interviews, because we do have a variety of people listening to us, right? From any of our livestock focused podcasts, you will have people with a high level of education. They're scientists with PhDs talking about nutrition, health, and they tend to use much, let's say much fancy words, not fancy, but terms that they use
I agree.
because they're
Fancy,
technical
fancy.
people.
Yes, fancy
Yeah,
words.
they're technical, and it's sometimes those words are needed for them to dive deeper on sharing their thoughts, right? But at the same point, we bring those people, we talk with them, have these conversations. We're recorded for the audience, and sometimes you will have someone there that is a producer, and it's not that interested on the detail of the the specific thing that happens with this organ, or but he's interested maybe in some more economical aspect on how that would impact their production. Okay, of course I want to have healthy pigs, but more than understanding how to this ingredient will make the difference here, I want to understand. Okay, I want to have a more distance view. I
High
want to see
level
the
picture.
production.
Yeah, we call it
High level picture,
helicopter
exactly.
view. Yeah.
Helicopter view, yeah. Perfect. So this is something, and of course sometimes you need to have those more technical discussions because you want to impact technical people, but a lot of times also you have people with that also want to understand that, but in a different way, and your language needs to be adapted to that.
Yeah. I remember my I don't remember this the source of this expression, but I like this. It's not my thought, but it was also about the language. It was saying that if a professor, do you understand what professor means? Like if professor cannot explain to a cleaning lady what he's doing every day in his office, then he doesn't understand himself. And I
Yeah.
think this is applicable to marketing work. We should not use buzz fancy words. Yeah.
Perfect, perfect. I like this saying also. We have it here in Brazil. Um, Slava, we're getting to the end of our conversation here. It's good, but it's been great, but it's time for us to wrap up. So just before we do this, I want to think about yourself when you're starting your professional life. If you could give any piece of advice your to the younger version of yourself, what would that be?
It's a very complicated question. I tend to say that yeah, I have one. I think we as a human beings, we are under, especially from developing countries, and I'm coming from developing countries, you extremely underestimate importance of the information that you know at and you just extremely underestimate, and you tend to optimize some of your decisions that can have long-term impact, like what to study, where to learn, where to work, how to choose between different job opportunities, and you do this uh, selection or these choices based on limited information, and then you understand that actually I just was not aware about this. For example, when I was studying in university, I I had my knowledge of English like the best in class, and I was relaxed because I was comparing. I was saying like I already better than everyone else. But when I joined the real world, I understand that my peers in top university was not the right uh, representative groups that I want to compare myself, because if you work to be international professional, you want to compare yourself and compete with native speakers, and this completely different level of English. And then when I understand this, understood this, I was already working, and then it took me another 2 years to study 3 times after work going to English school, because it was not enough to join international community. Another thing that I didn't expect, and people maybe from United States will not understand it, but from developing countries, for me it was completely behind my understanding this opportunity that you can get as professional to do professional career, because I couldn't imagine that you can get a job where you can earn 25K per year. That might sound funny for United States, but for developing countries, to get 25K per year as a fresh graduate without any background, without any experience, when you don't need to take bribes, without corruption, and without any like relatives, it was just behind my understanding that it's even possible. And those limitations of my mind actually resulted in some choices that I made. And for me, it worked well. I mean, overall, I just maybe I worked in top companies, like prestigious companies. It still worked, but I understand that for other guys it might not work well. So I would give this advice for myself, younger myself: try to expand your understanding, that your information, that your knowledge of all possibilities at much higher level, much broader. Not to limit yourself in your head.
Yes, yes. I see myself in a similar position until I start having some more international experiences, traveling around, doing, getting involved with international organizations. I compare the way I was thinking at the time, versus after these experiences, and we are limited by our mind, right? We are totally limited by how far our mind can think, and until you see those different scenarios, it's like you've never seen this color or a colorblind person, and you ask them like to, how can they imagine that color if they have never seen it, right? So it's exactly the same thing for me. Great. Slava, last thing I have here, well, actually, last two things is I would like to ask you if you have any recommendations for our audience in terms of books, movies, podcasts, anything that you'd like to address. And then where can our audience find you online?
I can recommend 3 books. If this allowed, if this applicable.
Please do it.
No, this
I'll
is
take some notes here.
And I'm more a book guy, and not. I also watch a lot of movies, but I think books really. I enjoyed reading books, and unfortunately, I don't have a lot of time for this, but I want to share this, and I think everyone. Yeah, what I like about the books that I will recommend, that they are all like real. It's not fiction, but they're written in a very easy way, entertaining way. And I think this is also one of the art of the writer to provide useful, practical, important information that helps the reader to expand his mind and but in a nice way, in entertaining way. I think it's extremely important not only to read the book but also to try to stick that some knowledge and remember. So 3 books. First one has a name Case in Point by Mark Cosentino. This is a Harvard Business School professor, and the book is about different cases. So first, I think 15 pages, just different frameworks that might be applicable to business, and this might be skipped. But then another 100 pages is written in 2-3 pages of interviews. It's real examples of interviews when you have dialogue of 2 people. And at the beginning of this 70 or 100, don't remember how many exactly, cases, it's like conundrums, business problems. Like we, a multinational company, trying to enter that market. How can we do this? Or we developed teleportation machine that can teleport. What should be price? And I think that why I like this book, because it provides you, by reading this, it shows you how questions that sound for you completely difficult, impossible to answer at all, or impossible to answer during just a sequence of 20 common sense questions, it provides you with belief that that it's actually possible. And I think this belief is much more important than content, because once you believe that something is possible, it's then a matter of technique or matter of number of trials. I think this very cool book. I read this several times as preparation to interviews to management consulting, but then I recommended this book to any person who don't even want to go to management consulting at all, because it helps you to become much more developed, open-minded person and with belief in yourself more. Second book is called The Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, and this is a scientist and writer who studied top achievers, top performers in different aspects of life, starting from business, from in sports, in education. There are a lot of cool examples. And I think it's also very interesting to see what are the factors that helps to achieve great success in different aspects of life. And the third one, I read it just last month. It's called Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond.
Can you repeat the name?
Yes,
Guns?
Guns, Germs, Germs,
Yeah.
and Steel.
Okay.
And this is a winner of the Pulitzer Prize. And I think this is a great book because it's so interesting. The book explains why one nation or country is more developed than others and more rich than others. And if there is any, is there is the reason for this, maybe that particular people are more smart than others, like from genetical point of view, or there is other factors, and why is it happened? And he studied to the root cause of this, and he explained this in a normal language, so you can follow the whole logic, and you can understand this high level view, helicopter picture, starting from 10,000 years ago to now. And he said that if how to say that someone who lives in a different planet,
Wow.
alien,
Alien?
alien, yes, if alien came to our planet 10,000 years ago, he would and try to project what country will be more developed now. He would say that by far Africa would be the most developed, and all other areas will be just some branches of Africa. And he is explaining, then studied why is it so. And I think this is with all polarization that currently happens in the world, that all different disbalance of different countries, different nations. I think this book that will help to understand us the big picture and really understand why is it happening. And he studies the root causes of this, not to say that this is because of development of particular technology that gave a huge boost for particular country. But then he tried to understand, okay, but why the technology was developed in this country? Like why Europeans went to United States and to America and not America or like Inc or Maya went to, or why China, who actually 100 years before Europe has fleet maybe 100 times larger than Europe, and we're doing this. Why did it happen? Why China didn't conquer the whole world? Like so interesting to read. I really recommend.
Sounds interesting. I took notes here. Probably gonna buy those in Amazon in the next few hours to see. I need some new reads. So
yeah, the books are available in audio format as well. So if for someone who drives a lot or just do jogging, running, this is the way how I usually listen to books. Yeah, maybe would be a good point to find them and provide name or links in to
the
this
description.
to this podcast. Yeah, just
yeah,
to make
let's
it easier
do
to
this.
find. Yeah, in terms of the last question was where can someone find me? I'm always open to new connections. I'm quite active on LinkedIn. I think the easiest way to find me is on LinkedIn by Slava Gavrylchenko. Yeah, I have open profile, looking for new connections, especially here in North America, because I just moved here in the industry. But in general, yeah, if someone wants to reach me, please shoot a message, and I will happily connect.
Awesome. Your last name is a little bit complicated, but we're gonna have it written there in the description. Well, for the Western, but yes. No, that's just great. Slava, I really appreciate you taking the time, to share a little bit of your story, experiences, and thoughts. I know you're a busy guy. You travel all around, involved in multiple
Yes.
challenges and opportunities. So thanks a lot for joining us today and sharing all that knowledge.
Sure. Thanks for having me. It was a nice discussion.
Perfect. So thanks everyone that stayed here listening to us. We really appreciate it, and see you in the next episode.